James Comer's using an Autopen? Joe says, yeah, whatever he says. That sounds good. Anybody who's a crackhead, we're gonna, like who's Hunter's friends, we're gonna let them go. Documents show some of the letters that Comer sent out used a digital signature, and he didn't write it himself. Scoop, Comer uses Adobe Acrobat to sign some letters.
Joe Biden just admitted to the New York Times that he didn't know exactly who all was getting pardons or not. He didn't know who was being pardoned with the use of his Autopen.
Democrats strike back against Republicans in the Autopen scandal. You see, Ryan Noblesse posted this over on X. He says, new lead investigator into Joe Biden's use of an Autopen. Signed letters with an Autopen. In fact, it was a digital signature. And NBC News is breaking this story, and you see right here, that's James Comer's signature. James Comer's using an Autopen? Well, James Comer's not the president exactly. These are subpoenas, not presidential pardons or clemency actions or national bills. But setting that aside, here's what NBC said. And so they were very excited about this. A lot of people posting like, oh, look, Comer, he's so dumb. Comer responded appropriately. We'll get to it. But he said, Comer has been leading the probe into Biden's use of the Autopen. We read the New York Times story yesterday, and Biden said that he basically delegated and deferred a lot of these decisions to other people. Just said, no, I had like verbal conversations with them. We talked about it in broad categories, like he admitted, right? It's like lots of people. So I just said, well, if they abuse children or whatever his criteria were, if they're Hunter Biden's friends and they abuse women and they're crackheads, then we're going to give them clemency. Is that what you want, Hunter? He's like, yeah, Dad. Yeah, I'll paint you a picture tonight. And so then Joe says, yeah, whatever he says. That sounds good. Anybody who's a crackhead, we're going to, like who's Hunter's friends, we're going to let them go. And they just, well, who are they specifically? Like, do you need to know the details? Not really. You kind of pick, you decide. I get to decide? Okay, so now the decision making on who gets it or not is to me. I get to decide who's in the group or not. That's a delegation of the power, which I would say is completely invalid. And how do you backtrace that to that delegation? How can you delegate the pardon power, the presidential pardon power? It's specifically to the president. And you're going to delegate that out and have other people. I'm not saying he could say, yes, that's approved, sign the document, or I approve all the names in that list, sign the document. But the decision point of you get to decide who's on that list and then I'll sign it is not, that's a critical part of the decision-making process, because you need to have some knowledge about what is happening there without just a blanket broad strokes pardon, you would imagine, unless you're intending to to pardon like a draft dodgers or some defined category or something like that. Or even all the J6 cases. Like the question, of course, for Trump, did he review these cases? Did he review the names? How did that go down? And can you compare and contrast that to what happened with Joe Biden? And I'm sure Trump didn't review every single case file with the J6ers, but I would imagine that there was a little bit more detail on the names, the charges, and Trump could run through it, even if it's just a cursory glance and say, list is good, I approve it, you're done. That's it, right? I think that is even enough. But it sounds like that was not even necessarily happening with Joe. He would give broad categories, people would fill them up, and then they would document that they were signed, and then it would go to the Autopen. Okay, so in other words, it wasn't going back to Biden. It would go from Joe to his number twos, then they would send to staff, then they would document it, then it would go to the Autopen, they would be executed. And you go, wait a minute. That final decision didn't come back and get validated through the president, which means anybody who came after that chain can just kind of insert themselves into the chain of custody, which is, of course, the entire point. But documents show some of the letters that Comer sent out used a digital signature, and he didn't write it himself. And so he sent a bunch of letters out, and I guess they're all saying, what, do you think that he's invalid? And the author of the document was somebody else. So they're scrutinizing Comer's records now. Now, Comer, I think, responded to this appropriately. Comer, he said, using digital signatures for official correspondence is commonplace, both for Republicans and Democrats in the House. Says Comer has never hidden the fact he uses a digital signature when appropriate, and he approves all official correspondence that is signed digitally. What's your chain of custody, Comer? Legally binding subpoenas issued by Comer always bear a wet signature and are never signed using an Autopen or digital signature. Comparing Comer's use of a digital signature for letters, or to the unauthorized use of an Autopen in the Biden White House for legally binding executive actions is absurd, and it's misleading. They're not even remotely comparable, which is true. It's a letter, right? It's like an email. Think of a letter like an email. So this was a letter. This wasn't a subpoena that they're referencing. Please contact my office, sincerely, James Comer. And documents are copy and pasted all the time. There's templates, all these different people, everybody has different names in their documents. So I think really it is much ado about nothing. It's just a letter. It's not even a subpoena. They say, hey, on an actual subpoena, we'll actually wet signature it. But these are just regular letters like correspondence. Like just every time you send an email, your email signature pops up. You don't rewrite that every time. You just copy and paste it, send it. Printed PDF, don't have to print, rescan it. It's not even an official document. It's just like, this is a procedural notice, and now you know. So it's obviously something that is trying to kind of muck the water up and rub Comer's nose in it. And, we'll see. And maybe Comer will start signing the documents. But it is something that Comer responded to, and he said, here, there's still time to delete this, Ryan. Ryan Noble, Chief Capitol Hill Clown Correspondent. Womp womp. Scoop! Comer uses Adobe Acrobat to sign some letters. So, yeah, lots of clowns out there in the media who are just trying to make a letter comparable to a presidential pardon or to executive orders that invalidated oil fields and oil drillings that impacted national security across the nation. Not the same thing. And Comer called him out. Here was a little bit more of Comer over on with Hannity. Here's what he said.
I think it would be a hard pitch in front of a court of law to try to defend what Joe Biden just admitted to the New York Times, that he didn't know exactly who all was getting pardons or not. He didn't know who was being pardoned with the use of his Autopen. And that's the whole basis of this investigation. This is just the pardons. What about the executive orders? I mean, there was no process that we have found thus far, and we've brought in 4 people thus far in our interviews and depositions, no defined process by which Joe Biden was the one saying, yes, use this Autopen to sign my name on this pardon or this executive order. I mean, Sean, we're just talking about signing your name, one signature. So it doesn't even take into account whether or not he was mentally able to understand what he was even signing. So this is bad, and I think this puts all of those pardons in peril from the Biden administration.
We'll see what happens. We're happy to see Congress digging into it because a lot of very bad people got pardons, and for strange reasons. Did Joe know anything about it? And I think it begs the question is, why do we allow the Autopen anyways? I mean, I think the Autopen maybe in an emergency situation can be used temporarily, but it should be replaced with a wet signature from the president and, a video reconciliation of that happening as well, so that this type of stuff doesn't happen. I mean, and that is part of a check valve also, like physically, like the president, if he's going to sign 8,000 pardons, how many pardons did Joe Biden initiate? Let's ask this question and see what it comes back with. So if you're going to sign that number of documents, I think it was like 8,000 or something like that was my guess. It's loading right now. 8,064. Joe Biden granted a total of 8,064 pardons. That's a lot. In addition, he granted 4,165 commutations, bringing his total acts of clemency to 12,229 total people who got that. And that came over, looks like that is sourced from the American Presidency Project. The physicality of that would act as a safety valve, right? Like you'd have to have just the president sitting there signing 12,000 pages of documents. And that would be great because then the president would be like, I'm going to sign the important ones. I'm not signing 12,000 things. And so when they just run it through the Xerox machine, they can do whatever they want. That's not within the natural limitations of the presidency, right? We don't want too much presidential power to be delegated away in the name of simplicity or convenience. It should be some real strict rules. Yeah, you can only sign so many documents, and that's great. That means there's a filter that happens and you don't have an exploitation of the office as we saw in this last term. And so you could have emergencies. Yes, okay, Trump's overseas. He can't get the document there in time. Sign it, boom. Come back. It's a placeholder for 48 hours and you shove in a wet signature document. So it's all coming from the presidency. And by the way, I want that accountability. Doesn't the president want that accountability? And don't the American people want that? Why do we want these questions about who's actually running the show here? All of it goes right up to the president, runs the office. That's the whole point. That's the structure of the government, vested in a president. Not a president and a bunch of subordinates who can kind of be pseudo presidents when it's convenient for the government. And what we get is this, and we get this bloated behemoth, gargantuan government that has virtually zero accountability because everybody is passing the buck. No one's got actually skin in the game. anymore, and it's being exploited, as we saw for the last 4 years under Joe Biden. So glad to see Comer's digging into it.